Okay, I've had a little bit more time to consider that match that we watched at Twickenham, Allianz, whichever you want, a little bit earlier. And I can't get past thinking it was just an absolute banger of a test match. As disappointed as I am as an Englishman, that England again couldn't get themselves across the line against the ABs, and that aura of the All Blacks is still very much intact with their 36th win against England to England's 8 wins. Some record that. Yeah, I couldn't come away thinking anything other than it was a great test match. But this video, because my previous video was just immediate responses following the match, here's a few more considered thoughts, a bit more time to let it digest. And here are some of my thoughts on this video on England. I'll get to New Zealand in a future video. So I'm going to do some ratings for the players. But first, some takeaways, big thoughts as far as England are concerned. Before I get into that, let me just say again, thank you very much for your support of the channel. Just by dropping a little thumbs up on the video, it really helps spread the word. I would love it if I would earn your subscription. Tell me what you think down below. Am I on the money with these? These are my takeaways from the game from an England perspective. Firstly, England's defence is better than England's attack. And you could have, I think my glass is simultaneously half full and half empty. I was a little bit nervous with Felix Jones going, and particularly the manner in which he went. So I was a little bit nervous, are England going to lose the progress that they've made with their defence? It doesn't appear they have. Now, New Zealand scored 3 good tries and engineered situations on the pitch where they had mismatches, and Mark Telea's finishing was outrageously good, and Will Jordan and Bowden Barrett between them are just class. You're always going to get that with New Zealand. And I think on the flip side, and this is where my glass is half full, England's defence was really, really good and limited New Zealand to 24 points. I would have taken that before the game. What England didn't do was score enough points. And as much as, and yeah, I'll come on to the bench in a minute, and when I talk about individual players, I'll talk about the missed drop goal at the end and the penalty. As much as England could have won it with that kick, they do not look nearly threatening enough. I'll come to the player ratings. Ollie Lawrence, Henry Slade, Tommy Freeman did a lot of good work defensively, did very little with the ball. And actually, as brilliant as Marcus Smith was, he didn't seem to appear like he had any real options or any kind of... The game wasn't being grabbed by the scruff of the neck. So some work has to be done on England's attack, because the game was there. They had enough ball, they had enough territory. They just couldn't engineer the situations that New Zealand did. So that's my main takeaway. The good thing is England's defence is going to trouble a lot of teams, and I'm looking forward to seeing the physical confrontation that comes against South Africa in 2 weeks' time. Australia next week, isn't it? Yeah. Can't scrum, can't win. I don't know how many more times England need to learn this lesson painfully before it really sinks in. I mean, I think it has sunk in to a Rugby World Cup final, a Rugby World Cup semi-final, numerous other games, and can't scrum, can't win. The flip side of that is, again, if you were looking at this with your glass half full, and I'll come to the player ratings in a minute, England's scrum looked quite good for 60 minutes. Ultimately, I think probably even more than a drop goal, the scrum probably cost England the game again, because it meant the positions they had were squandered, and it gave New Zealand so much territory in the crucial part of the matches. I touched on this in the last video. Is this a psychological factor? We've had it against France, we've had it against South Africa, we've had it twice against New Zealand, 3 times against New Zealand this year, not able to see out tight matches. Is that psychological? Or is this just, and again, I'm trying to put a positive spin on it, still a relatively, I don't know, how much longer can you keep saying it's a relatively new regime with Steve Borthwick and they're on a journey? I don't know how much longer you can keep saying that before you have to actually see it delivered. They're not far off. And the margins are so small at international level, they're not far off. But why is it England just seem to be on the wrong side of it? Is there a little bit of a mental block? Or from the flip side, do England not have, and I'm going to use that cliche word again, apologies New Zealand fans for using this word, aura. Do New Zealand have that kind of inbuilt self-confidence from 100 years of winning this fixture with such regularity? Is that the sort of mindset issue that England need to get over? Well, the one thing that I will say for certain is having 4 vice captains and a captain on the field makes no difference to whether you win test matches or not. Maybe that experiment should change. And finally, bench impact or lack thereof. And you can compare and contrast England and New Zealand on this one. New Zealand's have been, and Scott Robertson's been massively criticised for poor use of his bench in recent months, and that seems to be the main narrative that's coming out of this game. If England hadn't made their replacements, England would have won. We will never know what the alternative counterfactual would have been. I suspect a lot of those players got replaced because they were absolutely gassed out of the game from putting in such a big defensive performance. I don't know. But yeah, it's fair to say that the bench lacked impact, which you will see when we come to the ratings for the players, which I'll get into now. And again, your thoughts in the comments down below. Tell me what you think about this one. Front row, relatively poor showing from them. It was okay, average, middling. I've given Jamie George and Ellis Genge 6s and Will Stewart a 7. Will Stewart a 7 because he extracted a couple of scrum penalties from New Zealand in that first half. Set piece was kind of okay. Without being remarkable. Ellis Genge probably would have got a higher score, but for the fact, and I don't blame Ellis Genge for this entirely, he was caught mismatch and was run through and run around by Will Jordan and Mark Talea, respectively. But that's a system error, not necessarily an individual error. So it's hard to put that on Ellis Genge. But yeah, kind of middling scores, steady as you go. Will Stewart actually impressed me. And let's see what he can do against Australia and South Africa. But I don't want to say it, could Will Stewart be blossoming as an international tight head prop? Let's wait and see. I'm not making any judgment on that right now. The rest of the pack, I think Maro Itoje was the pick of the players, but he had able support from those 3 back row players. Chandler Cunningham South smashing things defensively. Tom Curry as well as a defensive. Bearing in mind Tom Curry, as a lot of people saying, I cannot believe Tom Curry's playing before this game. What's he doing anywhere in the squad, let alone in the team? And I will always back Tom Curry. He is a world-class player. And to have been out for so long and to come back and play the way he did is frankly remarkable, and he will get better. Tom Curry said that he's put in a lot of training and he feels like a teenager again, physically. Well, that's a great sign for England, and I think his trajectory could be upward. Ben Earl probably would have got an 8 out of 10 from me had it not been for that no arms tackle, which was a big moment in the game and was probably an avoidable penalty to have given away from him. George Martin just smashing people in the scrum as well. Love that guy. So I thought the England pack physically took it to New Zealand and actually did lay a platform for 60 minutes anyway that England should have been able to score more than 22 points from. But England had to just go for the 3 points because they weren't able to work situations where they could shred New Zealand. Maybe that's to New Zealand's credit. As for the halfbacks, Ben Spencer, I toyed with a 6.5 for Ben Spencer because he got caught at the base of the ruck. He got a box kick charge down. England's exits actually from kickoffs were really quite poor and that they need to get better. But I thought actually he did enough to show that he's a really good backup for Alex Mitchell and deserves to be on the international stage. I thought he had a decent game. I thought Marcus Smith was the pick of England's players and he was England's best player on the day. Little caveat with that one, he did miss 2 drop goals as well. I'll come to George Ford, obviously, but Marcus Smith missed 2 drop goals as well. So it's only fair to point that out, but his kicking from the tee was spot on. His general play was really good. And of course, he pounced on that slow, cumbersome pass from Cortez Ratimer to tee up what was England's only try. Marcus Smith was England's spark today. He looked really, really good. And yeah, it's harsh that he was on the losing team, but there you go. As for the centres, I've given them 7s. I thought defensively, Ollie Lawrence and Henry Slade were really good. They didn't really get the ball in attacking sense, did they? I don't remember seeing Ollie Lawrence doing anything, really. He was kept very quiet. Solid D, not really great in attack. Give them a 7. They were fine, but England should have been able to engineer more. As for the back 3, Tommy Freeman was quiet. He got peppered with some high kicks and struggled early on, but then got stronger. George Furbank was really good, particularly his work rate to get with Marcus Smith to help engineer that try for Emmanuel Faye-Waboso, who along with Marcus Smith, I thought was England's best player. His carrying in contact is absolutely insane. He's so strong, so explosive. And as I mentioned on the previous video, he's going to be in the mix for Breakthrough Player of the Year, and deservedly so. He's scored 5 tries in 6 international starts and 3 tries in 3 matches against New Zealand, 2 away, 1 home. He just makes things happen, and he just has that knack. And at 21 years of age, how did Wales let this kid go? It is mind-boggling. There's like some kind of alternative Marvel universe somewhere where Emmanuel Faye-Waboso is tearing it up and Wales are winning rugby games. But I'm glad I'm living in this universe where he wears the rose. As for the bench, and here we go, I've already said there was an issue with England's bench, and you have to say, you can't actually see those scores, can you? Maybe on a little screen. I've given 6 out of 10 for Theo Dan, who I thought was one of the better replacements off the bench, along with Ben Curry, who I've given a 7. He was only on for 20 minutes, but in that 20 minutes, he put in loads of defensive effort, 1 turnover penalties. I thought he was full of energy and vindicated his spot on the bench. I didn't give Nick Ezekwe a score because he was only on for a couple of minutes. But the rest of the replacements, particularly Finn Baxter and Dan Cole, I've given 5 out of 10. And George Ford, I've given a 5 out of 10. Harry Randall, I've given a 5 out of 10. Harry Randall's pass for George Ford was not good enough and put him under pressure. George Ford had a couple of clutch moments. He wasn't able to convert. That's what he's there to do, and he didn't do it on this occasion. All the calls, let me just say, the calls to say that should be the last time George Ford plays for England, I don't know what it is. I very rarely have any sort of thing approaching a rant on this channel. In fact, I never do, because my glass is always half full. But I've been through this my entire life being an England fan. Amazing players getting written off and people saying they should never play for England again. How many years did we have that with Owen Farrell? The guy is one of the best players that's ever played for England. George Ford is an absolute hero. And he's got one of the 17 enhanced elite player squad contracts, whatever it is, rightfully so, because he's one of England's most important and best players. Didn't happen for him today, but show me an international player that doesn't have a day where the kick doesn't go for them. He is a world-class fly half, and I want him in the England squad. And all the talk saying if Finn Smith had been on the bench, England would have won. I'm not having it. If England had taken care of business at scrum time and not given away penalties in the last 20 minutes, they would have won. If Ben Earl hadn't given away that no-arms tackle, England might have won. Had Harry Randall's pass been crisper, which it normally is, England might have won. There's a lot of decisions and there's never a single point of failure. So I'm, again, going to stick up for George Ford. He had a bad day today, but the guy is class. And that's all I want to say on that. They're my thoughts on England's ratings. Let me know what you think about that. Let me know what you think about my big takeaways. Is it psychological? Was it the bench? Is it Steve Borthwick? Is it something else? What's going on? Or actually, is it just one of those things and the margins of international rugby are so narrow, so small, so thin that, you know what? On any given day, one team will win and one team will lose. And another day, that'll be England's. It just feels at the minute like it's always England just on the wrong side. How do we turn that around? Interesting thoughts. There you go. A little bit more considered, with a little bit of time to digest the game. Again, I appreciate your support of the channel, and I would love it if I would earn your subscription. And I'll see you down there in the comments below. I'll see you on the next video too.